Nothing takes the past away like the future. I truly believe that no matter what you've done in your life, you can always change where you are by, looking to the future and from that moment on, being a different person. I do think that the birth of my daughter was sort of a rebirth for me. It made me look at life in a completely new way, and it made me appreciate life in a way that I don't think I ever had before. Giving birth has affected me consciously, unconsciously, you name it, and I didn't realize that there was so much water imagery on the record until I got to the end of it. And, in thinking about it, it sort of makes sense, because working on the record was a cathartic experience for me and a healing experience. Giving birth to my daughter was a healing experience, and water is a healing element. There's also the baptismal metaphor of cleansing yourself, being reborn, so it makes complete sense that will sort of pop up again and again throughout the record. Lots of people ask me, what I would say to my daughter, what do I want to teach her? What's the most important thing to me? Why are we on this earth? We're on this earth to be happy, but we're not just on this earth to be happy. We're on this earth to make other people happy, to be good, to help, to, make the world a better place. And so I would try to impart that wisdom to her, but I think it starts with self-love and self-respect, because when you have that, then you respect others and you know how to love others, and honesty and not being afraid to tell the truth. That's really important too. I just feel like if you have that, you have everything. Every one of us is, was born into this life or put on this earth or came to this earth for a purpose. We all have a destiny to fulfill. And I would also, I think that's important to teach your children too, that, everyone has a destiny, everyone is the master of that destiny. Life doesn't happen to you. Life is something that you make happen for yourself.
A substitute for love.
Fame can be very disruptive. It can be like a drug, like it gives you the feeling that you're happy. It gives you the feeling that you're fulfilled. It gives you the feeling of self-importance, and it can distract you from what's really important in life. The song Drowned World definitely addresses that issue. The idea of fame is very seductive to people. A lot of people have a false impression that if you're famous, somehow you're going to feel this incredible sense of fulfillment and you're going to be truly loved and truly happy. And everyone who isn't famous thinks that's what happens to you when you're famous. But anyone who is famous could probably tell you that the opposite is true. In fact, if you aren't really truly fulfilled and you don't have intimacy in your life and you don't know how to love, then thousands of people adoring you actually makes you feel emptier. I love a lot of sort of techno music, but the thing about techno music is that you never think of it as being very emotional. So what I wanted to do was make it intimate, make it emotional, like sort of prove that it could be. And I was really looking forward to finally going into the studio and writing music that was my point of view, from my heart. I really didn't know who I wanted to produce the whole album. I knew what I wanted sound-wise, but it's hard. Working in the studio with somebody is like a marriage, and it's a chemistry. It first started with the writing process. So I wrote with Babyface, Pat Leonard, Rick Knowles, and William Orbit. When I first spoke to William and I told him I wanted to work with him, I basically was fishing for information because I hadn't heard what he'd been doing lately. So I said, why don't you send me some DATs or tapes or whatever, stuff you've been working on. I just want to know where your head's at, pick your brain and stuff. So he sent me music, and I just flipped over it. And I said, oh my God, I've got to work with this guy now. So we started writing, and we wrote Drowned World in one day, and we hit it off really well, and I loved where he was coming from. And after we wrote about 5 songs together, I just said, you know what, I really like the sound of this, and this is what I want my record to sound like, and this is the person I want to work on it with. We had a ritual every night when we were making the record that we had to take breaks and have proper meals, because we worked around the clock, and it was very uncivilized. And for the most part, the engineer and William were sleeping every night in the studio, and it smelled like a locker room in there. It was really disgusting. So we had this ritual that we had every day, and that is that we got out of the studio, we went into the dining room, We had a table that was very sort of formally set, candle lights, everyone had their name on a name card. And it, you know, for like a half an hour we got out of the head of like making a record. But you can be sure that as soon as that, you know, 30 minutes was up, the whip was cracking.
When I was very young,
The beginning of my search and my spiritual journey, my spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, but I would say what really kicked it into first gear was the impending birth of my daughter. I started asking myself so many questions, like what's important in life? What really matters in life? What am I going to teach my daughter? Why am I here? Why is she here? What, you know, I just asked myself every elementary question you could ever ask yourself. I started studying the Kabbalah, and I started practicing yoga, and I started just kind of reading lots of different literature and it all sort of happened at once, and I don't think that there are any accidents. I think it happened to me for a reason. It happened to me like the teachers arrived because the student was ready. You could learn as much from Christianity as you can from Judaism, and there are threads that connect Judaism and Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism and, you know, you name it. I mean, the whole idea of karma and doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, or that everything you do comes back to you. I mean, that you pull in what you put out, or that, you know, the law of cause and effect. I mean, there's so many similarities that link all of these thoughts, philosophies, spiritualities, religions together that in the end you have to say, well, there must be some universal truth here. I'm not going to sit here and describe personally what each song means to me, because I think that mystery is important too.
your heart is not open, so I must go.
The power of goodbye is as much addressing my inability to say goodbye to people or end things that aren't good for me as it is just addressing the whole concept of letting go of anything, of walking away from things. It doesn't necessarily mean a relationship, and how hard it is, but how empowered you feel. In a way, it's sort of like taking your life back into your own hands. It sort of comes from the concept of if you love something, let it go. The way to keep something forever is to not fear losing it. As soon as fear comes into the picture, I have to have this and I can't let it go, you've lost it. The song Shanti came from, well, it was inspired by the Sanskrit prayers that we chant before we do yoga. And basically in Ashtanga yoga, it's something called satsang, and you chant Sanskrit. And the idea is that even if you don't understand the words and you just learn them by memorizing them and hearing them, that the saying of the word, the vibration that occurs in your body from saying it, actually brings a feeling of bliss and happiness. So the saying of Sanskrit is as important as the prayer that you're saying, the meaning of it. This is like a sort of artistic license that I took on two Vedic prayers from the 13th century, and then sort of I threw in a bunch of stuff too. So some shaman is rolling in his grave right now.
My mother who haunts me, even though she's gone.
I think I've been struggling with my mother's death, coming to terms with my mother's death all my life, and I think that sort of cropped up in a lot of my writing. And I do think that when you grow up without a mother, I think the love that you get from a mother is the love you can't get anywhere else. It's a certain kind of love. You can get love from friends and lovers and fathers and children even, but there's something so primal and basic and nurturing about it. I've always sort of carried this feeling through my whole life that I missed something incredibly important. Now, having a baby and being able to love my daughter the way that I feel I missed out on has obviously had a really healing effect on me. So I feel that I have to come to terms with it. And so Mergirl is about my struggle and not just coming to terms with my mother's death, but the idea of death.
I suffered fools so gladly.
I think I'm predominantly talking about fame in Drowned World, but you know, also other substitutions for love, whatever that may be. Drugs, sex, codependent relationships, you know, shoes, jewelry, whatever. You know, fame can become a substitute for love for a lot of people. Love, approval, whatever you want to call it. But in the end, that's not what it is at all, and that song really deals with that. In the song Frozen, every time that I say the word I'm talking to other people as much as myself, because I can personalize an experience, but I also feel like the idea that, you know, I think it's a universal idea that you cannot love unless your heart is open, and that holding on to hate and regret is a waste of time, a waste of energy.